there's something heightened about the restaurant experience that, why are restaurants such a compelling place in every culture? Why all over the world do we go to restaurants to celebrate our life that we lived with our partner, or to celebrate a success in business or something like that? It's because it's special. It's because it's elevated. It's enriching, and the term restaurant is a place of restoration. On a good day, you feel restored by that experience.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. The pandemic has altered the way we interact socially, perhaps forever. As the government begins to ease restrictions and slowly open up society again, when will it feel normal again to attend large gatherings like concerts and festivals? Places where people with a common interest come together to celebrate something special in their own lives. Pat Nourse is one of Australia's most influential food writers and the creative director of Australia's largest food event, the Melbourne Food and Wine Festival. Pat, how are you going?
Huck, it's great to hear from you.
Mate, it's been a little while, hasn't it? It's the landscape has certainly changed since I last saw you, that's for sure.
I live in Victoria. Forget the pandemic. That's radical.
Well, I'm in Canberra, and that's also, well, perhaps not as radical, but it's certainly life-changing.
God's country.
Yes. Good place to raise a family. Mate, it's been a pretty interesting time, and you've had a career change in the last couple of years, and, taking on the massive, amazing beast that is the Melbourne Food and Wine Festival. Can you take us through those early stages when you realised that you had to postpone the event?
It was, when I think back to it, I mostly picture myself in the shower. So it's good that we're doing this over the airwaves, I guess. So we're rolling into March, and me and all the people I work with are running headlong into the culmination of, for some of us, 12 months work. Thousands of phone calls, thousands of emails, 150 venues plus around Melbourne, which means at least 150 people here, probably more like 500. Dozens of people around the world, flights, hotels, sponsors, layers of government, venues, building stuff, ordering. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of moving parts. I'm relatively new to being in events full time, and I just remember my colleagues sort of saying, for the Melbourne Food and Wine Festival, which usually takes place in March, you sort of come out of Christmas, strap on the pads, kiss your husbands and wives goodbye, and just put your head down, because you don't see daylight again until April. But just to backtrack a little bit, we'd already come into the year, off baseline, because we had the fires, and Victoria obviously was significantly affected by that, along with many other parts of the country. And so we came back in the first week of January, and we put all of our festival campaigning on pause, to do the first of multiple pivots, love that word, to raise money for bushfire recovery. So because, even when we were on our Christmas break, that was when things were getting particularly serious in the northeast corner of the state here. And, we're already hearing from all sorts of people from across hospitality saying, what can we do to help? How can we raise some money? Or I've got a venue, or I've got some meat, or I've got some wine, or I've got people, or I'd like to lend some time, or I'd like to help some people, or I want to cook. So we just sort of flipped into organization mode, which is what the people I work with are really good at, and sharing information mode. So it was the Victorian and Australian hospitality community that was doing the hard work. We just connected them all and then told people about it. And it was really great. Like the number of people who volunteered their time and their venues food, drink, the works. It was just incredible. And within a week, we raised $200,000 for the state's bushfire recovery fund, which is great. So, yeah, but nonetheless, the year had gotten off to an odd start. Quite a few high-profile sort of international venues in Victoria were already feeling it. There were people who were seeing that, Australia is on fire. So people were cancelling their trips because they thought that, Melbourne and Sydney were on fire. So, and I'm sure some of the people you've spoken to for the show would echo that sentiment. And then, come March, busy, 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 but there's just this sort of insistent drumbeat on the news. This virus has been discovered. I mean, we all had our heads in the fires. We weren't experts on immunology then. Each of us in our homes, we were experts in fuel loads and the politics of back burning and hazard reduction burning, all that sort of stuff. Remember that before we were into viral loads and contact tracing. And so I guess it didn't seem front mind initially, but nonetheless, it was there in the background. And if you work in hospitality, you would have noticed that it was first felt in the Chinatowns of Australia. Which I guess is a reflection of the fact that the first news we had of the virus was coming out of China. We were sort of well into festival mode then, but we were sort of sharing stories from people like Sophia Levin here in Melbourne, a journalist who was trying to organise a lot of people to get people down to Chinatown to support venues in Melbourne that were suffering. There was the front page news that the Shark Fin Inn was going to close, a real late night Cantonese landmark here. Box Hill, another Chinatown here, was basically deserted. And meanwhile, on the radio, all the time you're hearing things, like so-and-so is being cancelled. The Saudi government has said that Mecca will be closed to pilgrims for the next X month, and over again. And you just think, is this real? Is this Australia? Because here living in Australia, we've lived through SARS and we've lived through MERS, and there were certainly sectors of the Australian economy that were affected by that, and the Australian community that were affected by that. But you wouldn't really have known about it day to day if you weren't reading the newspapers. It didn't change most people's lives day to day. So it was very easy, certainly from my perspective, with my eyes firmly set on the festival, to think that this could just be another thing like that. Maybe if we had some guests coming from China, maybe we'd not be able to have them. And, there were questions coming from our overseas guests about whether it was safe to travel. And I was reassuring them that the advice we had from, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade's website, from the similar bodies in the US and the UK, was all that it was fine to travel to Australia. In Victoria, the week before the festival, we had cases in the single digits. So the Grand Prix was proceeding, everything was pretty much go, but there was this sort of background note of concern, growing concern. And then when it changed very quickly. And I guess that's sort of even reflected when you look at the curve, the now happily bent curve, Go Australia, bravo Australia and New Zealand. That week, it was just like shooting up like a roller coaster. And we went from being all systems go a week out from the festival. We were looking at increasing our sanitation and that sort of stuff. But generally, we're all systems go for events that had 2,000 people sitting down for lunch together, elbow to elbow, for 5,000 people, going through a big spaghetti party or a Szechuan snack fair over the course of a day. That was all go until Friday the 13th. Ooh, ominous.
What a date.
But even then, actually, we woke up in the morning, and for me, all of the international talent cancelled all in a shot. Like they'd been, nervous up to that point because, if you were living in the States or the UK, things had gotten a bit more serious more quickly than here. But generally, it was like, it's safer to be in Australia. All those conversations stopped. And then the cancellation of the Grand Prix here in Victoria just sent shockwaves through the events business. And then that same day, we had an emergency meeting all day with with our board and with all the members of our team, and we watched the Prime Minister's press conference together and heard the words that all large gatherings would be cancelled from that moment on, and that was it. We postponed the festival the same afternoon. We were less than a week out from opening. We even a few days before that, we were selling lots of tickets. We'd sold out lots of our events. Everything was looking good. We'd had a fantastic reception for the program, which for me was the first one I'd worked on creatively. So I joined the festival in March 2019 during a festival, but I was just sort of smiling and waving and taking credit for that one. This was the first one I'd actually had a real hand in. And yeah, we just had to press stop on everything. Luckily, it's a weird term to use in this context, but we were far enough out that the 120-ish venues that we partner with in Victoria to stage events hadn't, had their cool rooms full of produce for events, things like that. We had some food ordered for some of our larger events, and I'm not going to mince words on this. We took a really big hit on this. It's cost our organisation a lot of money, quite apart from the human cost. I mean, that is a year's work for a whole bunch of people. Yeah. So,
how were you feeling at that time, having to do that after working so hard on such a massive event?
I mean, it was really hard. There's no two ways around it. But we had to move quickly as well. Like, we didn't have time to sit around and commiserate. We had to go, okay, there are people literally on tools. There are people building structures for us. A lot of them were built that we had to say stop. We had to try and, stop any money being spent. We had to try and shore up any relationships. We had to move really quickly to, stop any of those partner restaurants, bars, councils, cafes, from incurring any losses on our behalf. And we had to sort of communicate that message to all of our ticket holders and also think really hard. Are we cancelling? Are we postponing? What are we doing? Because the implications when you've got an event this big, this is an event that runs 2 weeks that, in years past has involved 250,000 guests across the events. There's a lot of moving pieces, so it's a real credit to the leadership of our CEO, Anthony Huckstep, and the cool heads of our teams, our events guys, our comms people. This is a really polished team at this organisation, and they, we could have just sat around crying or banging our heads against the wall or saying, why? I was certainly tempted to do all of those things, but, we had a job to do. So we got on with it. And it's only, I guess, since then, occasionally we'd have these weird moments, I'd get a text from a restaurateur or one of the guest chefs over those next 2 weeks once we went into lockdown saying, can you imagine we'd be on, second cold entree of blah, blah, blah right now? Or can you imagine we'd be, sitting down to lunch with 2,000 people in Treasury Gardens right now having a great time? In some alternate universe, we'd be drinking a cold beer right now thinking that was a great festival. Can't wait to do it again. But it wasn't to be. And, looking back, there's no choice there at all. I mean, there's absolutely no choice. The only worst thing, I suppose, would have been if somehow we'd forged on or if the timing had been different and we had to pull the pin in the festival. I mean, that would have just been the worst. So, yeah, it's been a wild old time.
One of the reasons you're in the role that you're currently in is because of the incredible contacts and your amazing knowledge in food because of your career as, one of our most influential restaurant critics and food writers. How have you felt through this time about what's happened with the collapse of the restaurant industry and everything that's unfolded?
Well, I mean, I don't want to talk about the restaurant industry in terms of collapse. I mean, it's certainly going to be a really hard time. It has been and will continue to be a very, very difficult time for anyone who makes their living in restaurants or hospitality. But I don't think I'm too much of a Pollyanna in saying that I think that, just to think about it, I guess with the fires in mind, restaurants will be the green shoots, and we've all seen, and many of your guests have spoken to how adaptable the restaurant trade has been. You know what I mean? That's pretty remarkable. And I guess thinking of the fires again, the first people to jump on that in many cases were people in hospitality. Lots of businesses, lots of Australians. Everyone did their bit for that. That was a really moving part in our recent history. But I think that people in hospitality are particularly alert to this. Because if you're dealing face to face with people on a leisure footing, maybe, or on a casual footing, that hospitality footing, whether you're a front of house person reading it in their faces, or if you're a business owner or a chef reading it in the dockets, or cashing out every day, where public sentiment is. You know the score. If people are feeling good, if they're feeling flush, if they're feeling scared. You are really alert to what Australia is thinking. And likewise, as soon as Australia is freaking out, you're going to feel it first. People are going to stop going if they think that Chinese restaurants are where the virus is at, rightly or wrongly, of course, they'll stop going to Chinese restaurants. If they are worried about restaurants as a vector, they're going to stop going to restaurants again. If they're feeling safe, they're going to go out, and that's for better or for worse, I had a food writer friend of mine the other day say, I've never felt more non-essential than, being a professional food writer.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
And restaurants and music and art and leisure are incredibly important. But, I had a lot of phone calls and emails and messages in those early days of the lockdown from restaurateurs around Australia and hospitality people around Australia. And, they were reeling from this. And some of them would say things like, the government's not responding because they want to throw us to the dogs. They're in it with the insurance companies. They want to do this. They want to do that. And I thought, I don't think so. I don't know if our governments are organised enough to be that conspiratorial, for one thing, but more to the point, when a pandemic comes along like this, or an event, a black swan comes along like this and, takes everyone as a broadside, there's infrastructure, there's policing, there's rule of law, there's hospitals, there's courts, there's prisons, there's basic food supply, there's water. I care deeply about restaurants and hospitality and leisure and art and culture, but there's other things that take precedence in the pecking order, in the priorities. And I just don't think restaurants featured in those initial conversations.
In this time, you're one of those critics that has a deep love for restaurants and dining out, rather than to go in there and sort of with a red pen and sort of a lot of crosses.
That'd be a boring job, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't it?
Or is it great? Like, if you're one of those people who has an axe to grind with restaurants, or who sets themselves up as the shield, to the protector between the poor public and the wily restaurateurs. Maybe you go in and every misplaced fork or undersalted potato, you're like, whoa, smash, bang. What a funny way to live your life. But sorry, what was your question?
Yeah, and it would be interesting to see if that model of the restaurant critic lives on after this pandemic. But I guess I wanted to know, because you're not you were never one of those sort of critics. You have a great love for restaurants and people in the industry. What you've been missing from restaurants, not having access to them during this period.
I think that I've had a lot of conversations about what recovery is going to look like, and some people are saying, well, once you realise that you can pay X dollars for that same bottle of wine and X dollars for that steak in your house, you can cook your own, you've made your own sourdough, why would you go to restaurants anymore? And I think that misses the whole point of restaurants. Like, yes, you get fed, but that's not what restaurants are about. It's not what bars are about. Any of us can drink at home for far less money than drinking in a pub or a bar. You can make coffee at home. Hell, I've been making coffee at home. That's frightening in itself. That's not what it's about. It's about connecting with people. It's about living differently, living bigger. The very best experiences in restaurants, you go to a good restaurant with your friends or your family, your loved ones, and you sit a little taller. What you say seems a bit smarter. Your jokes are funnier, and you create memories. You can absolutely do those things at home or under a picnic table. Don't get me wrong. I love those things as well. But done right, there's something heightened about the restaurant experience that, why are restaurants such a compelling place in every culture? Why all over the world do we go to restaurants to celebrate our life that we lived with our partner, or to celebrate a success in business or something like that? It's because it's special. It's because it's elevated. It's enriching, and the term restaurant is a place of restoration. On a good day, you feel restored by that experience. And I think all of us can welcome that, even if it's just having a great coffee, down the road where the person knows your name and remembers your order. Or maybe they don't, and they just make a great coffee, right up to the full box and dice of, going to a fantastic regional restaurant in Australia and making a trip out of it. I think there's something really powerful about that. And, as great as it's been, if you've had the privilege of having a bit more spare time at home, if you are lucky enough to not be cold sweating 100% of the time about your ability to pay your rent or your mortgage, there's been some upsides to being at home. I've been here cooking with my girlfriend, Helena. We've been making really nice food. I've been really happy to cook. Spiced it up with the occasional takeaway from, the fantastic restaurants that are doing that here in Melbourne. But I'm really looking forward to seeing my friends again. I'm really looking forward to that experience of being in it's kind of a different zone. It's not a public space and it's not a home. It's this special other place, restaurants and bars. And it's a great place.
Yeah, you said some pretty beautiful things there that I tend to agree with. And the Melbourne Food and Wine Festival tends to magnify all of that and celebrate not only sort of Melbourne and Australia, but the wonderful chefs and operators across the globe as well that, in a different circumstances would have flown in for the festival this year. You are, however, launching an iteration of the festival. Can you tell us about that and what's going to unfold next week?
Can we get through this conversation without saying pivot again? I don't know. Let's try.
I hope so. Yeah. Let's definitely do it.
No P words here. Our festival is postponed, so it is currently our intention to stage as much of our March program as soon as we can, as soon as we're given the all clear by the government and by health authorities. I'm speculating here. This is not our official position, but I would imagine that probably won't include international guests, just because it doesn't look like anyone's going to be hopping on a plane. Maybe if we're lucky, we'll get Ed Werner out from Auckland still, but otherwise it's not going to have people coming in from Asia and the US and the UK and Europe. But we still have a very robust and exciting program. So this is not a replacement for that. But while we are waiting on gatherings of a more substantial size to be safe and legal, we still want to do our bit. We haven't stopped. We haven't switched off the lights and pulled down the shades at Melbourne Food and Wine Festival. We've been working all through the pandemic and the lockdown We've tried to be as useful to Victoria and to hospitality as we can possibly be, whether it's sharing information with consumers, sharing information with the punters at home about who's doing what and how to support restaurants, whether it's, buying merch, buying gift certificates, getting takeaway, doing cooking classes, any of those alternate revenue streams that have sprung up while dine-in trade has been dialed back or switched off. We've tried to, advocate for the trade as well. We've been doing forums, with everyone from restaurateurs to commercial property lawyers to the banks. The Bank of Melbourne is our principal partner for the festival, and they're really on the front foot with this stuff. Visit Victoria is our destination partner, and as you can imagine, they're as keen as anyone to get people celebrating the wonder of Melbourne hospitality again, and even just down to really practical things like here's what's happening with the laws, or when things were first closing down, talking about how you can sell or donate food that you haven't been able to sell. So I guess this is just an outgrowth of that. We still want to be connecting people. We still want to spark up fantastic conversations between Australian hospitality people and the best and brightest overseas. And I guess the cool thing is we can share this with everyone all around the world. I mean, in a perfect world, we'd have you here in Melbourne. We'd be clinking glass with you walking down the street here. It doesn't get much better than that, but that option isn't available to us right now. So in the meantime, we can give you a taste of Melbourne and a taste of the festival, whether you are walking the dog in San Francisco or sitting down to dinner in London or in Shanghai. And that's kind of fun, I think.
Do you think that this online kind of version will continue when the festival does come back to life in its normal form?
Well, it depends if it sucks or not, I guess. I mean, I'm hoping it doesn't suck. I've never done an online festival before. I have no reason to think it will suck, but prepare for the worst, hope for the best. We've got some good talent on board, some people who I know, most of them have been guests at the festival before, and people like Rene Redzepi, for instance, from Noma. His first visit to Australia was for the Melbourne Food and Wine Festival. I think it was more than 10 years ago. And, off the back of that, he developed a love for Australia that eventually grew into him, running Noma here in Australia for a magical time there. Remember that? That seems like a long time ago now.
It does. It feels like forever ago.
Yeah. Massimo Bottura, Helen Go, a former Melburnian herself, all these people who have this great connection with Australia. We're very, very glad to get on board. And I think, for creative people like Helen, like Massimo, like Renee, like pretty much everyone who's on the bill, it's going to be very interesting to hear from them where they've been finding an outlet for that creativity while they've been on hiatus. And I think it's just really interesting to get a sense of the day-to-day in different parts of the world. This pandemic has not been evenly distributed, and it's hit us all in different ways at different times. So I think that's going to be a really interesting part of the conversation. And I'm quite looking forward to that. So, yeah, I mean, if it's good, and let's assume it's good, then why not do more of it? I mean, I guess that's sort of, if you're in the trade, I guess you're asking yourself the same question. You might have been doing some takeaway or, having to access a new revenue stream. And maybe you don't want to do that full time because that's not what you're set up for. And, we're an events company first and foremost. Content is part of our business, but having people together for a big party is sort of what we're known for. So we're not going to stop doing that. But it's good to be able to have that other option. And I would imagine that there'll be plenty of people in hospitality who will stay diversified, or at least they won't throw away their packaging machine and their understanding of, the internet and delivery platforms and things like that, because, I don't know if we're going to see another pandemic again, but once in a lifetime scenarios seem to have a habit of cropping up more than once a lifetime. I mean, if you think of anyone who's in those parts of Australia where they've not only had drought, then fire, but then pandemic after that, you want to have your options as open as possible, I think.
It's like a pretty bad Hollywood blockbuster, isn't it?
Yeah, what are we expecting for June? The crabmen, murder hornets. That's right. And there's still things going on. There's still cyclones and droughts, and there's a plague of locusts in Africa. And I think everyone having less money, governments, businesses, individuals, it's not going to make us any more resilient or any easier in the years to come. So we've got to be flexible, and we've got to be willing to do things a different way, because at the risk of straying towards that most overused of phrases, the new normal, it is going to be business as unusual for the next little while. But, hopefully out of that will spring opportunities. I don't think it's going to be for everyone. I'm sure there are people who are listening to your podcast who are really freaked out by what's happening and stand to lose their businesses or their livelihoods. I mean, that's true for a lot of people. At the same time, for others, if they move fast and if they, make the right moves and think community rather than individual, there's gains to be had there, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And moving forward, I know you don't really know when the festival will be on again in the sort of physical sense, when we can all be there clinking glasses. And your gut instinct is that we probably won't have international guests, which makes sense. But do you think that might be an opportunity to shine a light on some of the lesser known talent in Australia with some of the talent that's already on the bill?
Well, it's been interesting for me because joining the festival, I mean, I've been associated with the festival. I used to work for Gourmet Traveller, and the Gourmet Traveller was a partner of the Melbourne Food and Wine Festival for many years. So I've been involved as a talent scout and wrangler unofficially, and officially as a host for more than a decade. And I guess maybe because I'm coming at it through that international talent lens, and because I work for Gourmet Traveller, my thought about the festival was that its core business was that international guest thing. But if you look at the events of the festival as a whole, the majority of the events are things dreamed up by people in venues in Victoria that, they get the festival to help market. So it's individual restaurants and bars, councils, cafes, community organisations saying, hey, I've got this cool idea. Why don't we do this? So while we love those international guests and they're amazing and they really contribute to the conversation, and we love sending them out into the world as ambassadors for Melbourne, for Victoria, and for Australian hospitality, when you look at the numbers, it's actually a relatively small part of what we do. And as great a response as we had to our global dining series, which is what we call the events that have the chefs from overseas and from interstate, we had a great response to that. A lot of those sold out very quickly. Lee Tiernan from Black Axe Mangle was going to be at Leonardo's rocking out.
Awesome.
That sold out in no time flat. But the thing that sells out first is the world's longest lunch. And this year that was Philippe Michel, Stephanie Alexander, and Jacques Raymond. And it doesn't get much more Melbourne than that. That is the Melbourne Old Guard. And we sold out nearly 2,000 tickets in half a day.
That doesn't surprise me.
And they're at $185 a pop.
Wow.
So while we love those international guests, there is a really, really strong support from Melbourne Food and Wine Festival guests for homegrown talent. Josh Nyland's session sold out really quickly. Matt Lindsay, Otama Carey. We had a really great response to all those. We had a really great response to an event we were going to will put on with no guest talent. Maximum Chips, which is just a an idea that evolved from a joke in the office to, hey, this is actually a really good idea. Let's put it on. A hot chips party for 2,000 people. That was very close to sold out when we had to press the pause button. So I guess that speaks to the power of good and or silly ideas, done in a fun way, and on people's willingness to get out and embrace a good time with food and drink. So, yeah, I mean, wow, it was a really long-winded answer. Yes, I think it's a great time to celebrate Australian talent and a great time everywhere. I mean, I think a lot of Australians, and I acknowledge the privilege of this statement, but I think a lot of Australians have fallen into the habit of going overseas every year and doing that for their fact-finding mission. But, and I'm not going to make this a plug for Melbourne. Melbourne is obviously the best, but a trip to Adelaide, a trip to Hobart, a trip to Sydney, a trip to Brisbane, a trip to Perth, a trip to Darwin, Newcastle, Geelong, Ballarat, Bendigo, Launceston, the countryside, the beach. We have it pretty great here, and there's so many fantastic destination restaurants, and I actually, I lived in Sydney the last 20 years, and I didn't go back much over the last 12 months because I was pretty busy with living my best Melbourne life. But went back a couple of times for the odd work trip or the odd wedding, and it's pretty great. Like Sydney's a great destination, and I feel the same way as a person visiting Melbourne. There's so much great stuff on our doorstep. There's amazing restaurants. A road trip up to Fleet in Byron or any of the Fleet family, that's a real treat, or further up the coast in Queensland, let alone going to Bray, or Igny here in Victoria. I'm really hoping that Annie Smithers can reopen Dufermia. It looks like I should get that one in plenty of time because I am really looking forward to celebrating a birthday there soon. There's a lot of really great stuff there, and it also doesn't have to be expensive. Those special options are there, but there's a great way to get out there and enjoy your city and enjoy Australia and do your bit as well. And I think that's cool. I think that was sort of the way we were looking post the bushfires. I think if you can get out and support those communities, that'll really make a big difference. But make it Australia this year. It's pretty great.
It certainly is, mate. And it's pretty damn obvious why you're in the role that you're in.
Canberra. We haven't talked about Canberra.
No, it's my secret special spot. Don't give it away.
All right, I won't tell people.
Don't tell them how good it is.
Don't get on the roundabout. You'll never come back. Yeah. But Canberra, don't you think Canberra has the most good coffee shops per capita in the world?
Well, I'll tell you what. Canberra's changing food landscape was a big lure to bring the family here. No doubt about that. It's
excellent food. Yeah. Like are the farmers markets back up? The farmers markets are running here. If they're back up and running in Canberra, the farmers markets this time of the year, the one out at what we used to call Natex, I think it's called Epic now. I mean, that is, for my money, I probably shouldn't say this as a professional Victorian, but that is the best farmers market in the country.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Particularly in autumn, winter, spring. It's just outstanding. Canberra region wines, obviously not a great vintage this year, but there's still great winemaking happening all around Canberra. Bar Rockford, possibly my favourite bar in Australia, definitely top 5.
Yeah, and Pilot, Italian and Sons, it's a pretty good place to be.
It's great. It's great that you've got the Lost McConnell. Don't tell Sean I said that. I don't think he likes being called that. But I mean, I got to his new place a couple of times over the summer. What a top spot. So Canberra punches so far above its weight. It's got some great places to stay. It's got the best mountain biking in Australia. It's fantastic nature. I would wholeheartedly endorse, once you've been to Melbourne and to all the major cities in Victoria and up and down the Victorian coast, you should definitely consider going to Canberra.
Well, mate, it's always awesome to chat. good luck next week with this online version of the festival, but also really looking forward to actually sharing a drink or two when the festival takes place later on this year. And really appreciate your time.
Please do join us.
I would love that.
Just all you have to do to be part of it, plug coming, all you have to do to be part of it is hop on to www.melbournefoodandwine.com.au, or our Instagram is melbfoodwine. Snappy. Pretty much everything we're doing is free. Pretty much all of it is going to happen on Instagram Live. So please join us. I think you're going to really enjoy it.
Bloody oath, mate. Awesome. Good plug too. Well done. Talk soon, and and good luck, and really looking forward to seeing you again soon too, mate.
It's been a pleasure being on the show, Huck, and I've really been enjoying it. So as far as the P words are concerned, this is one of the better ones to come out of this situation. So I hope it'll extend once we're out of the weeds. Out of the weeds. That's quite snappy. That could work.
Yeah. You're onto something there. Thanks, Pat.
See you, Huck. Bye.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we share the stories of Australia's hospo community, suppliers and producers in search of hope during this pandemic. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.